It started in China with two simple words, Tang Ping, to lie flat. At first, it sounded like a joke, a phrase born on the internet, another meme for tired students and burned-out office workers. But it wasn't a joke. It was a quiet kind of rebellion. Tang Ping means stepping out of the race, not quitting society, just refusing to run in circles anymore. No career ladder, no 5-year plan, no desperate chase for an apartment you'll never own. Just breathing, existing, doing the minimum needed to survive. It's not laziness, it's honesty, a simple recognition that the promised reward never comes. And it didn't stay in China. All over the world, young people began to feel the same fatigue. From Berlin to Seoul, from Sao Paulo to Moscow. Different languages, same story. Work harder, earn less, live smaller. Everywhere, the math stopped making sense. You can call it apathy, or nihilism, or collapse of ambition. But to many, it feels like the only sane response to an insane system. They don't march, they don't shout, they simply lie down. Not in defeat, but in quiet defiance. Because sometimes, refusing to move is the only way to show that you've had enough. For most of history, work meant progress. It was the deal every generation made with the world. Give your time, your effort, your strength, and in return, you'll have a place to live, food on the table, maybe even a better life for your children. That deal doesn't exist anymore. Today, people work just as hard, sometimes harder, and get almost nothing in return. Wages barely cover rent, apartments cost more than entire lifetimes. Healthcare, education, and even rest. Everything has a price, and that price keeps climbing while incomes stand still. The old slogans, work hard, follow your dreams, the future is yours, now sound like jokes told by people who bought their houses 30 years ago. Young people see it clearly. They grew up watching their parents burn out in offices, their friends drown in student loans. Their older siblings work 12-hour days just to afford groceries and a shared room. They learned early that effort doesn't equal reward anymore. When the system stops keeping its promises, participation stops being moral. It becomes optional. And so millions quietly decided to opt out, not with protests or strikes, but with stillness. They stopped chasing the dream that no longer exists. They take the jobs that pay the bills, but nothing more. They live small, spend little, expect less. To outsiders, it looks like laziness, but inside, it feels like survival, a form of emotional self-defense. Because what's the point of running if the finish line keeps moving? What's the point of working if the work no longer leads anywhere? This isn't about rebellion in the old sense. It's about dignity. The dignity of saying no to a system that feeds on exhaustion. They're not demanding change. They've already made it by refusing to play. And maybe that's what scares the world most. That a generation has learned to live without believing in the reward of hard work. Ambition used to be a virtue. It meant movement, hunger, energy, the will to climb higher, to make something of yourself. Parents praised it, schools encouraged it, and entire economies were built on the assumption that everyone wanted more. But somewhere along the way, ambition stopped making sense. The world got smaller, tighter, more expensive. Every path to success became overcrowded or already owned. Even the best students, the most talented and disciplined, now find themselves fighting for jobs that don't pay enough to live, or chasing careers that vanish with the next algorithm update. You can work endlessly and still remain exactly where you started. You can follow your passion and end up in debt. You can do everything right and still lose. So people began asking a quiet, dangerous question. If ambition doesn't work, what's left of me without it? And the answer, for many, was peace. Or at least the idea of peace. A small apartment, a slower life, a day that belongs to you. Ambition once promised meaning. Now it only guarantees exhaustion. It's not that people stopped caring. They just stopped believing that effort alone can change anything. Success stories sound like fairy tales now, rare exceptions dressed up as rules. The irony is that capitalism still runs on the myth of personal growth. The ads keep shouting, you can do anything, become anything, buy anything, but everyone already knows it's not true. The only thing growing is the gap between work and reward. So ambition quietly withers, like a plant starved of sunlight. Not because people are lazy, but because they've seen too much. They've watched how easily the system eats its own children, the ambitious, the driven, the hopeful. And so they lie flat, not in despair, but in clarity. Because the opposite of ambition isn't failure, it's freedom. The kind that begins when you stop chasing what was never real to begin with.
When Tang Ping first appeared online, many thought it was uniquely Chinese, a reaction to the pressures of their ultra-competitive culture. But within a few years, the same idea appeared everywhere, under different names. In Japan, they call it Satori generation, the enlightened ones who have given up on material goals. In the West, it sounds like burnout, quiet quitting, or bare minimum Monday. Different labels, same emotion. Exhaustion disguised as calm. The borders don't matter anymore. The economy may look different in Shanghai, Paris, or Sao Paulo, but the math is the same. The cost of living grows faster than any paycheck, and every promise of progress feels like a trick. For the first time in modern history, an entire global generation feels older than it should. They share memes, not ideologies. Instead of manifestos, they post screenshots of rent listings. Instead of political protests, they share videos about moving to cheaper cities or quitting the corporate grind. It's not apathy, it's awareness. They see that the old narratives of success no longer fit the world they inherited. They don't want to overthrow the system, they just want to stop being crushed by it. When your entire life becomes an unpaid internship for a future that never comes, lying flat feels less like rebellion and more like self-respect. And so, quietly, millions of people across continents are synchronizing, not through ideology, but through fatigue. They've realized they're living in the same story, a system that demands constant motion, but no longer explains why. It's strange to think that the most global movement of our time isn't about connection or progress, but about rest, a collective pause in a world that never stops. Maybe that's the real globalization, not trade or technology, but shared exhaustion. A generation that spans every language and speaks softly in one voice. Enough.
No matter where you go, the story sounds the same. In Beijing or Berlin, in Bangkok or Boston, the rules don't change. Work harder, stay flexible, keep improving, stay online, stay available. The slogans are translated into every language, but the meaning is universal. Never stop moving. That's the quiet genius of modern capitalism. It no longer needs to control people directly. It just keeps them busy. The pressure isn't external anymore. It's internalized. We motivate ourselves, discipline ourselves, compete with ourselves until there's nothing left to give. Every country sells the same dream. If you work hard enough, you'll make it. But making it now means survival, not success. Even in the richest nations, people live paycheck to paycheck, chasing promotions that don't change their lives. Meanwhile, prices rise, rent doubles, and hope shrinks. It doesn't matter what passport you carry. The algorithm that decides your worth is the same. The company is global, the job description is identical. The exhaustion feels familiar. We've built a system that depends on motion, not progress, just motion. It doesn't care if you move forward as long as you keep running. The moment you stop, the numbers stop growing, and the illusion of prosperity cracks. So when millions of people decide to slow down, to step aside, to lie flat, the system panics because stillness exposes how fragile it really is. For decades, globalization promised connection and opportunity. What it delivered was synchronization, a shared fatigue that crosses all borders, a universal burnout. The irony is that capitalism has finally achieved what ideologies could not. It made the world truly united, not by hope, but by exhaustion. And maybe that's why this quiet rebellion is spreading so easily. Because once you realize the race is rigged in every language, it doesn't matter where you stop running.
When you stop chasing goals, the silence can feel strange at first. There's no schedule, no next step, no validation waiting at the end of the day. For a while, it feels like losing gravity, as if the world no longer knows what to do with you. But slowly, something else begins to appear. People who lie flat don't disappear. They start noticing what was invisible before. Morning light, the sound of cooking, the quiet of not checking your phone for an hour. Life stops being measured in productivity and starts being measured in presence. It's not a philosophy of laziness. It's a return to proportion, to a life that fits the size of a human being, not the scale of an economy. In this new rhythm, ambition transforms into curiosity. Instead of climbing, people explore. Instead of owning, they learn to experience. They travel not to collect countries, but to remember what distance feels like. They work, but only enough to live, not to prove. And what's most surprising is how similar this looks across the world. Young people in Seoul, Lisbon, Sao Paulo, and St. Petersburg are doing the same thing without coordination. They cook at home instead of going out. They freelance or garden or make music no one pays for. They talk about rest without shame. A generation raised on the idea of endless growth is finally learning how to stop. And in that pause, they are finding something capitalism never taught, that the value of time is not in how it's spent, but in whether it still belongs to you. For some, this is temporary, a phase of healing. For others, it becomes a way of life. Not rebellion, not retreat, but recalibration. The world keeps demanding motion, but more and more people have quietly discovered you don't have to move to be alive. Maybe the next definition of success won't be about climbing higher, but about standing still and feeling whole. Every generation thinks it understands the future. But this time, the future came without asking anyone's permission. It arrived quietly, not as revolution, but as withdrawal.
The lay-flat generation didn't plan to change the world. They simply stopped believing that the old world still works. They don't want to destroy anything. They just no longer want to carry it. And maybe that's how civilizations actually shift, not with noise, but with fatigue. For centuries, growth was sacred. More production, more progress, more speed. That was the faith holding everything together. But what happens when growth no longer makes life better? When progress stops meaning happiness? Now we're finding out. Governments call it a crisis of motivation. Corporations call it a labor shortage. But maybe it's something deeper. A natural pause after centuries of acceleration. People aren't broken, they're recalibrating. They're starting to see that meaning isn't made in offices or on screens, but in the small spaces that still feel human. Friendship, sleep, cooking, love, boredom. The lay-flat generation may look passive, but they've done something extraordinary. They've redefined success. It's no longer about having more, but about needing less. Not about achievement, but about awareness. And while the system still measures value in motion and profit, a quiet shift is spreading toward slowness, toward enough, toward life that doesn't demand to be productive, to be real. Maybe the future won't be a race at all. Maybe it will be a long, deep breath after a century of running. The world will call it stagnation, but for the first time in a long time, it might actually look like peace.
Think about it. Just think about it.